Now, now, do you see how easily he's able to learn when you slow down? You remembered what I said. You were able to put it together in your mind and come up with a beautiful application because you slowed down. Do you see the power of it? It almost gives me a Woody. I'm such a good teacher. You know what else? I know somebody used to do this. So he would be at a bar and he'd be talking to girls and he'd say, so what you're really saying is if you can meet a guy who's like who makes you feel connected and makes you feel that sense of destiny to the point where you go, that would be incredible, wouldn't it? Then he sits down in the chair, right? So then it's all anchored. You get it? Yeah. Anchoring is really simple. You don't need to take a course in it. You know, John Wooden, anybody know who John Wooden was? You wouldn't. But, damn it. UCLA, my school where I went to, had the world's best basketball team. When John Wooden was a coach for like 30 years, they won the NCAA championship like 28 years out of that 30. He was arguably the greatest college basketball coach in the world. And John Wooden only had one play. He had one defensive play, which was man-on-man. He had one offensive play, which was the fast break. His players were drilled over and over again in taking one kind of shot, which is a 15-foot shot from basically the free throw line. He trained his players that when they would get the ball, they didn't do any fancy stuff. They would always stop at the free throw line and pass the ball effectively. And UCLA's opponents, there was no point in their opponents ever scouting UCLA to find out what their plays were because they were obvious. There was only one. But they drilled them over and over and over again so they did them to perfection. So you don't need to have 20 different ways to anchor people. You just need one or two. You can anchor by stacking things on your thumb and doing this. You can put things in your hands. That's another way. You know, when you think about someone you want to have wild sex with, I know my face doesn't immediately pop into mind. But you know, you can put things in your hands and imagine they're there in your hands. That's another way to anchor. It's very simple. You can anchor things to an object, to a chair. You can, here's another wicked one. I've done this. Right? So you're talking to the girl, you've got your drink here, and she's telling you about the things that turn you on. So you say, so what you're really saying is, so if you could be with someone who's a great kisser, words are whatever qualities she likes, whatever it is, you say, so, and you look at your hand. So look at your hand, guys. Practice with me. Look at your hand. Why do I look at her hand? Because I want to direct her attention to what I'm doing, right? So if you could be with someone who makes you, makes you really laugh, has great hands, and is a scandalous kisser, where do you think that could lead? They don't get it. How many times have you done this?
Probably about 35, 40 times.
35, 40 times. How many times has it actually worked to get a strong response?
It's never failed to get a strong response.
It's always worked. It's worked 100%.
100%.
Have you ever been caught?
I don't even,
No.
never.
There you go.
One time a guy repeated it.
A guy repeated it? What do you mean?
Girl,
Oh, repeated it? Good, she's putting it in.
I also put a bit of a challenge on it as well. I say, what is it about when you've got those three things in front of you, you've got those three qualities in front of you, so what is it about this person that would want to make you come back for more?
Ooh. What is it about them that would make this person want to come back for more? So he says, so if you could be with someone who has this, this, and this, what is it about you that would make this person want to come back for more? That's beautiful, because now he's not only anchoring all that stuff to him, he's now challenging them to jump through the hoop and explain why they're worth it.
And there's a little bit of fractionizing in there too, right?
That's right. Well, hold on. So he's going, so if you could be with someone who has this, this, and this, what is it about you that would make this person want to come back for more? By the way, I've used a similar thing when women say, well, I'm not going to go out with you because I know who you are and you just want to fuck me. And you know what I turn around and do? I say, if I was a woman, I would have so much confidence in my ability to fuck my brains out. I know that that person would keep coming back for more because the sex would be so fantastic. That gets rid of the objection. But that's brilliant. See, Jonathan, this is an example of a student improving on what I do by adding in an element. I taught you that element, but I never put it together in that way, did I? So when you meet someone who has this, this, and this, what is it about you that would make this person keep coming back for more? So it forces her to begin to describe her good qualities and try to prove to you that she's worthwhile. Yes?
I used it once, and then the girl said, well, I'm also a really good kisser. And then she couldn't come up with any other stuff.
So what you have to say is prove it.
So then I said, oh, actually, that's all I wanted to know about you. And I kissed her.
Good. So do we get this, how it works? You could do this with anything, even if it's not a formal quiz. If you pick up that her trance words, in the course of talking, you pick up her trance words are destiny, energy, and ecstasy. You could say, you know, isn't it interesting that if you were to meet someone who made you feel that energy, destiny, and ecstasy, how it could lead to something that would be a whole new direction for you to take? Almost like there's a much bigger part you want to take on tonight. But you know what? Why don't we go somewhere where we could really focus in without all this noise and really relax and enjoy? Now, notice that part where we could really relax and enjoy. Enjoy what? I don't say. So it keeps it safe, and it also gets her to imagine it. Because she imagines it. If I said, you know, why don't we go somewhere where we could relax and focus in, where it's quiet, and we could really enjoy making out and fucking like crazed weasels. That might often work by this point, but yes. But memorize which stuff? Well, first and foremost, don't memorize, understand. Look at me, understand how it works. If you understand the principles, you can come up with your own stuff or your own unique combinations. I'm very serious. This is as important for you as it was for him to learn to slow down and vary his intensity. Understand how it works. And then second, if you want to memorize it, rehearse it out loud. Don't rehearse it out loud just sitting there. Actually get up and move the way you would move if you were doing it. Imagine the person in front of you. And if you really want to add a kicker, imagine being inside the other person, listening to you, having all the responses you would like them to have. That's a great thing to rehearse before you go out sarging. I was going to talk of this when I wrapped up. But if before you go out sarging, you rehearse all of this, and then you imagine taking on the perspective of a woman, hearing all this, and getting really turned on in her body and thinking, I want to fuck this guy. You would be surprised how that communicates a great message, and you wind up having that happen. Instead of rehearsing failure and getting rejected, why don't you, look at me, instead of, this is a subtle point. And notice, I'm not saying instead of rehearsing failure and being rejected, rehearse being accepted and succeeding. I'm going to say this. Instead of rehearsing failure and being rejected, why don't you rehearse being inside the woman, feeling totally turned on and wanting to fuck you as a result of what you're saying? Because that is really, really powerful. It sends a message out. And Lisa's taking notes. Yes.
Does that mean if you're rehearsing inside of yourself superior performance of from the time you go out talking with a woman to closing it, and you're rehearsing the stuff over and over and over again in your head,
Right.
it's just you're gonna perform because you're gonna push yourself
Right.
doing it.
Right. But I didn't say superior.
Okay, not superior.
You don't need, well, this is an important distinction. You don't need superiority. You look at me, you just need to be effective. And sometimes effective is just very simple. Sometimes the most effective thing you can do is pick the right subject. That's a quote. Quote me. Sometimes the most write that down. It's a Ross Jeffries quote. Sometimes the most effective thing you can do is to pick the right subject. But you can't pick the right subject unless you know what kind of energy and vibe you're looking for in a woman. So to get the skill of picking the right subject, you must spend some time in study. Whether you're meditating or going out for a walk or hiking or in the shower, you must spend some time beginning to discover the energy and vibe of the women that you would like to be with, so that you know instinctively and intuitively how to pick the right subjects. In this dream, it was a way of my mind, my unconscious, deeply rehearsing the kind of energy that I would like to be with in a woman who I would deeply love, perhaps for a lifetime. So you need to spend some time not only rehearsing the skills and the beliefs and all of this and the concepts, but you need to spend some time tuning in to the type of energy and vibe in the woman, the personality that you would like to attract. Because certainly what I don't want is someone who needs to be persuaded to have sex with anyone at all. Someone who doesn't enjoy sex, it's not my job to take a cold, sexually turned off or freaked out woman and try to make her open to life. That's not my job. It's not my job to take someone who's terrified of taking any kind of step and making her into an adventurous person. It's not my job to take someone who's a selfish person and make her into a giver. Hold on. It's not my job to take an angry, enraged person and make them into a happy, open person. This is not my job. All the things I've said to you notwithstanding about people have their first responses, if people really have these patterns, I'm not out to teach them. I'm out to teach you guys. But it's not my job to be their transformer or their healer or their therapist or the person who has to work to convince them very much. Anytime it begins to feel like work, like I'm pushing the snowball up the hill, if I'm pushing the snowball up the hill, then it's not speed seduction. If I'm pushing the snowball down the hill and riding on it as it goes, and going, whee, that's speed seduction. And then she eats my ice cream cone at the bottom, on the way down. That's speed seduction. But if it feels like I'm pushing hard or the timing is just really off or she's not displaying those, she doesn't bring her own mind to the exploration. She's not fun. She's not healthy. She doesn't have some reasonable ability to control the circumstances of her life. Many women who are flaky are not flaky because they don't like you. It's just their life is totally chaotic and out of control. Their parole officer tried to rape them and walked in on them shooting heroin with their twin brother, who's cheating on them with their mother. This whole Jerry, you don't get Jerry Springer here, do you? I was on that show 3 times, by the way. And before it was violent. So, for this, I love a kung fu lesbian teenage Siamese twin vampire who lives in a trailer park on the Dole. No, for teaching this, I've been talking about this for a long time. So you need to decide and you need to explore for yourself in different ways what is the vibe and the type of women you want to attract. And sometimes you can only do that by having many experiences and seeing what you like and what you don't. Now, certainly a lesbian who has you duct tape her to the bed and fulfill her rape fantasies, did she want you to slap her and choke her while you were fucking her? Yeah. Certainly that's someone who would be fun, but I don't know if you'd want to take her home to family supper. Although it might liven up Shabbat dinner at my sister Marion's house. And my nephews would like it. Whenever I bring over a beautiful girl, they go, oh, I won't tell you their nickname for me because it's a family nickname. Lisa knows it. But they go, Uncle blank blank has brought someone else again. Not anymore. My nephew Gideon's girlfriend is smoking hot. She's half Israeli, half Italian. She's not only gorgeous, but she's got a great attitude. She's real spicy and spunky. She calls me uncle, but she flirts with me like, hello, uncle. And she's giving me a little, hello, niece. She told me she was having dreams about me. She said, Uncle, I want to talk to you. I went, all right. I said, Uncle. She kind of looks at me like, are you doing something? She says, I've been having dreams about you. I went, really? Tell me, niece. And she said, well, in this dream, I'm in the swimming pool outside in the backyard, and your voice is calling to me under the water, and I try to fight it, but I feel myself being pulled downward irresistibly. I can't control it, and the water just takes me, and your voice is down there waiting for me. And she said, I've had this dream several nights in a row, Uncle. And And I said, well, Martinique, if you're asking me, am I doing something to you psychically? No, I'm not. I really wasn't. I said, I love my nephew. I would never do that to him. I wouldn't either. But, maybe I represent a level of power and maturity that you feel is really, really attractive, but you're not ready for it yet. So that's why you fight the tug. She said, I think you're right. But so my nephew's, he no longer cares because he's got his needs well taken care of.
What was it, instead of rehearsing something in rejection?
Instead of rehearsing rejection, why don't you rehearse how women will feel as they totally want to fuck you as a result of what you're saying? Now, I want you to rehearse out loud what you'd say and what you'd do, but then I want you to fractionate and take on the woman's perspective being on the receiving end of this. How she would feel in her body. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so proud of you men. You've become great learners since Friday. You're on it, you're learning, you're participating, you're demonstrating great understanding. Fantastic audience. This is fun. Remember I said I also don't want to perform emotional dentistry. I don't want to have to pull her emotional teeth. And if a woman is chaotic, I said if she doesn't have her life organized, I don't want to deal with it. Some women have to have a moderate level, at least a modicum, a good degree of control over the circumstances of their life, because otherwise it just gets I don't have the time. I'm too busy, I have too much on my mind. This job I'm doing now is just part of what I'm working on. And I don't have time for people who waste my time, who can't follow through. I just don't.
Ross, quick question.
Yeah.
Can you rehearse this in the context of equanimity as well?
I mean, not grasping onto it, being okay. Yeah, that's far too complex a question to ask for most people here. You're right, yes. My answer is yes. That's very advanced thinking on your part. You're Indian by extraction, aren't you? My Indian students are always the smartest. Shame on you white people. I'm the Omega male. No, he's not good at sergeant. Welcome back. Are you enjoying yourselves?
Yes.
How are you doing?
Super.
Yeah, I know. Super. You did some good work. Good for you, buddy. You feel different?
Unreal.
Unreal, yeah, I know. That was some good bit of work. So this afternoon, I want to do the following things. I want to cover how to install those 4 vibes that are really attractive to women, how to use them in the openers, and then how to carry them through the entire Sarge. So this afternoon, we're going to do vibe and the walk-up diamond openers. Since you guys want it, you want some different sequence of patterns, I'm going to give it to you. Since you feel you need the training wheels, I'll give you your training wheels. We're going to do a little bit more on the meditation exercise that you need, and then we'll take some more questions. You know what, Charlene? If you want to take like another 45 minutes to flit about, I want to do the openers with them. You're welcome to stay, but I won't need you to teach for like another 45 minutes to an hour. You okay with that? Charlene also has CDs for sale there in the back of the room, and she's told me she'll take the curse off me if you buy them, so. Right, so I want to congratulate you guys. I was absolutely thrilled to see the level of participation this morning when I shared that dream with you. You guys were spot on. I mean, really good. And even educating me, I did not realize some of the dynamics of what made that work. I really did not. You guys educated me. So seriously, give yourself a pat on the back. Right. So one thing I want to show you, and this is something I do want you to take notes on after you understand it. Because this afternoon we're going to get into the vibe and openers, and then we're going to show you sequences. A couple of examples of what would make for a successful Sarge, because you want that, right? You guys need some sense of a roadmap, some kind of training wheels that you can run on before you take off the wheels and just go. And I understand that. I've been promising that to you. I had to lay the groundwork first, because now you have a good working understanding of how this stuff works. Now when I show it to you, you won't be scratching your ass, sticking your thumb in your rectum and going, ba-da, 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 ba-da. Well, maybe the Germans will. I was picking on the French, but now I've been picking on you guys. At least he doesn't talk like, I know what you're doing. You're planning to take this to Sudetenland. Yeah. Okay. Aren't you? Now this is really, really interesting. I came up with this back in like right around Christmas time this past year. I was really thinking about this whole program of nailing your inner game. People have asked about those DVDs and CDs. That's my bad. I'm still working on it. We have your names and addresses. Eventually we'll get them to you. So be patient with me. I will send you updating emails. But I've been working on this idea of, okay, let's say you get guys to stop doing all that reinforcing and all that ruminating. That's all gone. And you give them beliefs for learning. How are you going to teach them what to pay attention to and what to ignore? Because when you set out and you do a Sarge, as I said, one of the most challenging things is confusion. You're not quite sure what worked or what went wrong. In James's case, he got good positive feedback. When that lesbian lifted her skirt, pulled aside her panties and showed him and said, look, it's dripping. And, right, and then she took him home and said, duct tape me, please, and fuck my brains out. There was no ambiguity there. No ambiguity. And there's no uncertainty in your mind that you had a 100% successful outcome, right?
The first time I did it was a different story.
The first time you did it? Oh,
First time I ever used a pattern.
okay, but don't gainsay me here. For the point of the story, when that happened, you had success. So there was no confusion there, right? But the bottom line is there's usually no confusion at the peak of your skills because it's all working. And when you have no skill at all, there's no confusion. You know you're failing because nothing's happening. But when you start to move up the learning curve, often what happens is you're not sure what to pay attention to. You don't know at what level or at what point in the Sarge things are not working. So it gets confusing. Am I right or am I right? Yeah. Raise your hands if you've experienced this. The single biggest challenge for those of you in the back of the room who teach these skill sets, whether you teach your own or mine, I'm telling you right now, the single biggest challenge for guys getting this stuff is not approach anxiety and it's not fear. To be certain, those are important, but the biggest single thing is confusion, not knowing, are they being effective or are they not being effective? Are they becoming attractive or are they not becoming attractive? It's that fractionation back and forth between thinking it's working and then thinking it's not working that's deeply confusing. You're fractionating yourselves in a way that's not useful. So one thing I came up with that I think is very useful, when you're looking at any kind of skill set, but especially sarging, one thing to look at is to chunk it according to time. You can look at, if maybe you need to improve what you're doing in the preparation phase. Maybe there's something you need to do more of or to do differently or to do less of or to subtract or to add in.
You mean before every time?
Before you go out and sarge, are you doing the right preparation? Are you visualizing how you're going to behave? You understand? Are you rehearsing the basics? Are you putting on the right vibe when you go out? Do you understand?
Yes.
So you may need to make some improvements in the preparation phase. Now bear in mind, here are the ways you can improve. This is where I do want you to write notes. So write notes. There's those things that you need to add in. So you may need to add something in. It may be that there's simply something that you're entirely missing that you need to add in. Okay? So you may need to add something in. That could be a skill set, that could be a belief, it could be a vibe, it could be an attitude. There may be something you need to add in. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
There may be something you need to subtract out. This is in, I'll tell you, but this is in any phase of improvement, whether it's before, during, after. There are the things you need to add in, things you need to subtract out. There may be things that you need to diminish. So it's not that you shouldn't do them, but maybe you diminish the intensity. And who had an improvement in diminishing intensity? You may need to diminish the intensity. You may need to diminish the frequency. In other words, don't do it as often. You can diminish intensity, frequency. You can diminish the speed at which you do something, so do things slower. You may want to diminish the amount of internal dialogue, so don't let it go entirely, but just really turn it down. So there are those aspects that you need to diminish. Does that make sense? Yes. So you may need to add in, you may need to subtract out, you may need to diminish, or you may need to increase or intensify. So you can increase the overall energetic intensity, you could increase your volume, you could increase your speed, yes? You could increase the number of repetitions you simply go out and do. So instead of talking to 5 women, maybe you have to increase it and talk to 20. You can increase the amount that you listen, the proportion of how you do something. Maybe you actually increase the amount of listening as opposed to the amount of talking. So at any stage, and all these stages I'm about to show you, you can make adjustments in these different ways. And finally, there are those things that need to be balanced. In other words, yes, you're increasing or diminishing them, but you're only doing it in pair with something else. So for example, maybe you diminish your dominance, but you increase your playfulness. So you're not diminishing your dominance outside of anything else. You're doing it in concert with something else. Understand? Does this make sense? Yes. This is pretty common sense, but people tend to forget it when they're in an area of light that's very charged. Yeah? So, the first phase we look at when we look at sarging, where we might want to improve, is the preparation period. There's how you prepare immediately before you go out and sarge, like the hour before. Do you do a little bit of meditation? Do you rehearse your beliefs for learning? Do you rehearse your vibe? Or you just go out without any rehearsal, without any preparation? I can tell you, even for myself, when I take time to clean up my energy and prepare my vibe, and imagine myself walking into the room, and when I sarge, I do all my vibe, I do all that stuff. And then what I do is I imagine walking in to the venue and I see a symbolic representation of my energy reaching out and unconsciously touching all the women who are already going to get me. Now they may not consciously be aware of it, but because they're tuned into my vibe, they're already getting me. And then my job during the evening is not to create any kind of attraction at all. It's merely to take the attraction that the vibe created and to bring it to the conscious surface. You understand? That's my model for me of doing speed seduction. Everything I do with my behavior and my language, it's not creating anything. It's simply bringing to the surface the connection that happened the instant I walked into the room. Even if they're not looking at me, my belief is the ones who are going to get it have already gotten it unconsciously. Now, some of them are so aware of their own energy and their own bodies, they immediately know they've gotten somebody, they're just not sure who. So they'll look around the room, and then when they look at me, they go, oh, he's the one I get. You understand? So maybe you need to do something in the preparation phase. I bet most of you do. I bet most of you do. Then, this is really cool. There are those things you do continually throughout the sarge. There are certain things that you need to do continually throughout the sarge, from the beginning to the middle, all the way to the end. It may be something like that that you have to work on. Now, what are some of the elements that you should be always doing? You never stop doing it. Always be in control of your state. Always control your state. Right? Always be calibrating the other person to see if they're following with you or not. So controlling your state, calibrating just means paying attention. Right? Control your state, calibrate. I teach you should always be in rapport. Those who say break rapport, with all due respect, don't understand what rapport means. They think rapport means trying to gather information about the person or getting them to accept you. That's not rapport at all. Nothing to do with it. A person could hate your fucking living guts and you could be in rapport with them. To me, rapport is about an unconscious sense of connection. Somewhere on the unconscious level, you're vibing with that person, even if they fucking hate you. The best way for you guys to be in rapport is to not worry about it. Quiet your mind and focus on having the right vibe. Now, you got that?
Yes.
So you may need to make adjustments in those things you're always going to do, continuously. You never stop doing them. Does this make sense? You're going to be changing your vibe throughout the sarge, but you're always paying attention to you, on some level, to your vibe. Does this make sense?
Yes.
If you can learn to analyze things in this level, you'll get a lot better understanding of where you need to make improvements. Now, there are those things you do in a sarge, look here, before we take notes, that you do sequentially. Meaning you only do them once, and you do them in a certain order. Think of a recipe. When you bake a cake, you put it together, all the ingredients, you mix it up in the bowl, you stick it in the oven, you take it out of the oven, but you don't crack in the eggs once you've baked it, right? You've got to do it in the right order. But you don't keep cracking in the eggs. You do it once at the right point, in the right proportion. Does this make sense? Yes. So what we're going to cover this afternoon is really those things you do sequentially. When you guys ask for a sequence of patterns from start to close, you're asking for things that are done sequentially. You only do them once, and you do them in a certain order. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's what you're asking for. I'm going to give that to you. But I want you to understand that may not be where you need your improvement. And it may not be where you have the most leverage. You may have the most leverage for improvement somewhere else. Now here comes the really tricky one. This is where mastery lays. Mastery is found right here. This is where the biggest leverage for improvement is, and where people who have mastery. I'm a masterful teacher, correct? You would agree, yes? Yes. Very masterful teacher, yes? Yes. Because I understand how to do this with my students. Look here, this is subtle, but this is where mastery is. You can hear a pin drop. This is the stuff that you return to periodically throughout the sarge from time to time. So you don't do it all the time, but neither do you only do it in a certain order. You return to it periodically throughout the sarging process. So I'm going to say it again. You don't do it all the time, but you return to it periodically throughout the sarging process. This is where mastery is, right here. And in fact, in any kind of persuasive skill set, I can't speak to other things, but in any kind of persuasive skill set, the mastery is right there. And it's what most people ignore on their way to mastery. Most people who get good and stop right there don't understand this and don't master this bit. It's this bit that is your key to absolute mastery, right here. Yes, I will in a moment. Thank you. Good learning. I'll get there. What would be something we return to periodically? We don't do it constantly, but we periodically do it. Well, it could be firing off anchors if you do that. What's that? Fractionating. Fractionation, we don't do it every moment, but we periodically return to it. Now, the frequency with which you do it and the level on which you fractionate can vary. But people who are great communicators naturally fractionate. Whether they intentionally plan it out in their mind or just do it inherently, they do it, whether they know it or not. So that's one thing you do periodically. What else might you do periodically?
Check her state.
Okay, I would consider that almost, it's on the line between something you do continuously, but I'll buy that. What else? What is something you do periodically? You don't do it all the time, nor do you do it only once. What's that? How about periodically checking to see how comfortable she is with being touched? Periodically, we're going to return to seeing. One of the things I do is periodically, I check in to see the balance between comfort and heat. I'm working towards two things. I'm working towards comfort and heat. And periodically, I will check in to see where that's at. Now, how I do that's another question. But periodically, you ought to be checking in to see how comfortable she's growing with your touch. That's one example. It's a periodic thing. What else might we return to periodically? Right? Very good. He nailed it. Structuring opportunities. Periodically throughout the sarge, we're structuring opportunities and offering challenges, are we not? Remember I talked about challenge as being something that's really powerful? Periodically, we're testing for readiness. We're testing to see where she's at. Remember I said, if a lady is giving you every signal that she's totally turned on by you, wants to be with you, and is absolutely ready, don't go piling on more stuff. You're done. Job over. You understand what I'm saying? And in the beginning, many of you What I know you're going to do is you're going to get so excited about these tools working, you're going to go crazy with them. I'm saying no, chop the throttles, put out the flaps, put down the landing gear, it's time to land. You're going to be putting the throttles to the firewall and wanting to go 800 miles an hour. This is key. Also, utilizing her responses. Remember I told you about that? When she gives you very strong responses, do we ignore information that, who does most of the talking in a good speed seduction? Let's hear it. She does. 80% of the talking is being done by her. If she gives you information and you ignore it, you are a fucking idiot. Do you understand what I'm saying? Write that down. If she gives me information and I ignore it, I am a fucking idiot. This is the beauty of speed seduction, that to do it well, you really have to listen and pay attention to the unique person in front of you. If you're doing 50 different stories to show her what an exciting life you have, you're not doing speed seduction. And more, you're doing the work. Remember, we're not the guys who push the snowball up the hill and it gets heavier and heavier. We take the little snowball, we tap it, and it gathers its own momentum and creates an avalanche, a snow slide. So you better be paying attention to what she says and to incorporate what she says. Yes, you're always paying attention, but utilizing what she gives you, you do periodically. You understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I'm always paying attention to her. But if, for example, she does, I'm not going to always be going, you're right? I'm not someone who wears a big overcoat and flashes myself in the schoolyard. Well, sometimes, but it's only a hobby. All right? So there are those things you do periodically. Periodically, look here, periodically fractionate your own energy. Periodically switch between being someone to someone who's being funny. Periodically check in with your physical body. Periodically, from time to time, check in and feel your feet on the ground so you remember you're actually there present in a human body, not flitting around in the stratosphere. Does that make sense? Do any of these ladies want to play with me on stage? Or are they still shy? Oh, look at that. They're afraid of me. No. Hey, no bullying. That's not allowed. I'm not of a mind to offer a gift to, look here, not at them.
I just wanted to say it.
Calm down. There you go. I'm not of a mind to offer a gift to someone who's not of the mind to eagerly accept it. If you give a gift, you don't persuade. If you're persuading, you're selling, not giving a gift. End of story. You know, if people don't want to learn how to triple their orgasms and to have feelings that they've never had before and be even more in love with their boyfriends in a way where their boyfriends never even think of looking at another girl ever again unless she picks the girl out to go home with them, that's fine. I don't care. It's none of my business. They're the things you do at the end when you're closing the deal. Maybe you really have to work on your closing. Although I don't even like the word closing. It's more like an opening. A powerful opening for a new direction. And sometimes when you ever meet someone and within 10 minutes, you just know you like this person? Because you know this person can lead you places. And there's like a different part that you want to take inside yourself. And you can feel your opening. You feel your opening for something new, a new direction you want to take inside. And even though people may laugh and friends may not approve, and I get that, you may even feel a little strange about it at first, still at the same time, you also can find a place in your mind where you set that aside, where you just can see yourself stripping away completely from anything that would have blocked your own pleasure, right? It's a place where you want to succeed, yes? You all want to succeed. You can see yourself succeeding in a new direction, right? Right, boys? Right. Okay. There's stuff you do at the very end. Yes? You're closing. Although, now, there's a sense in which that's a mistake. That's also a mistake. I don't believe that closing is a discrete part of the process. I believe the moment I approach someone, the way I interact with them energetically has already begun the close. Anything that moves us further along in a mutually enjoyable exploration is part of the clothes. If you look at the clothes as something that's completely separate, then you're making an error in your thinking, because it's not. It's not really separate. So for the sake of the diagnostic, yes. But in reality, it's not really a separate thing. The story I told you about my nephew Gabe is 18 years old. He's a virgin. It's so cute. 18-year-old girl who's hanging out with him. She clearly has a crush on this kid. They went to meet me for pancakes. I was sitting at this diner in the farmer's market. And she had read the game, so she wanted to meet me. So she and another guy and my nephew Gabe show up. And she's on one side, Gabe's on the other. And I'm talking to her about the game. And suddenly I look at her and I say, so, do you have a thing for my nephew? Now, women do this thing where the real answer will flash across their face for a tenth of a second before they hide it. She went, and then she hit it. And I went, aha. And she and Gabe both turned the same shade of beet red. And they were looking at each other. I went, aha, very nice. So later he says to me, he says to me, I almost gave away my nickname. Ixnay on the nuncle akake, right? Or your ired fay. My nieces and nephews have a nickname for me that they're not allowed to say. Or call me by. That's for them only. That's right. Good girls. So he said to me, I almost said it again. He said, Uncle Paul, he said, what do I do with what's her name? What do I do with Nicole? I mean, I said, have you kissed her? He said, no, I'm not quite, I'm not sure I should. She's my friend. I don't really know. I said, you haven't even made out with her? No. I said, dude, she clearly wants you. He said, yeah, I know. She told me she was a virgin. And then he looks at me and said, I'm a virgin too. I said, okay, no problem. I'm thinking, you won't be for long, kid, not with me as your uncle. So he says, well, what do I do? See, for him, he's viewing it as a discrete thing that he does at the very end. He's viewing any kind of physical contact with her at all as something he does at the very end to close the deal, and that's a mistake. I said, no, you can't just go from no contact to lunging at her. I said, try this. Try play fighting with her. Get into a pillow fight with her. Wrestle with her. So she gets used to the touching. He went, oh, I get it. And then he said to me, you know what? I met someone even hotter. And she's not a virgin. I went, oh, okay. Go for it, kid. So it could be, to view closing as something that's discrete and separate and different is an error. But for the sake of this diagnostic tool, we can think about it that way. And then there's what you do afterwards. How do you review the situation? How do you learn from your mistakes and take what you did well and reinforce it and congratulate yourself for it? Now, yes, Eric. So I'm going to show you this stuff, but what I'm going to show you deals with the, you got a comment? No, I wasn't asking. If you have something, I want to hear what you have to say. So what we're going to be dealing with is you want to know the sequential stuff, right?
Yes.
But bear in mind, it's only the sequential stuff. It's only a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing. And the other thing is, when you look at changing, these are some more distinctions that I think you'll find helpful. You may have to adjust things that are analog, and you may have to adjust things that are digital. And let me explain what I mean by that. Analog variables are anything that vary along a range. For example, Lisa, do any of these lights have a dimmer switch? Can you just, there's some lights here that switch on and off. Which ones switch on and off? Okay, that's digital. Off, turn them back on. Okay, this is analog. They vary. No, that's on and off. That's digital. Analog would be you can dim them. Are there dimmers? No, that's off. All right, put them back on. Put them back on. Anytime will do, like now. That's the dimmer, okay? That's analog. It varies along a range. Could you put the other ones back on? There you go. So some of what you're doing is analogical. For example, your volume, the speed at which you move, the speed at which you process. That's an analog. Digital, it's either there or it's not. Digital would be you either say this word or you don't say this word. You either make this move or you don't make this move. Does that make sense? So you may want to look at those things that have to be shifted or changed. Should we wait? I will, I don't mind. That's like one hell of a condom, isn't it? This is like the ultimate French tickler. Looks like something, it's Bigfoot's French tickler. Look at that. Oh, you half expect it to coo when you pet it. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Now, I don't want to say I'm that big, but when I go to Disneyland, I pay adult admission and an extra kid's ticket, too. But I'm bummed. Thanks a lot. I'm here all week. But I just made that up on the spot. You Germans will not stop the talking, yeah? If you do not stop the talking, I shall have to introduce you to Golda, the she-wolf of the Israeli SS. And she will make you sit in the comfy chair and tell you stories while you are a very naughty boy who doesn't come to visit enough. Right. Do we get these distinctions? Finally, there are those things that are interpersonal, meaning how you interact with others, and intrapersonal, what's going on inside your own skin. These are pretty exhaustive and thorough diagnostic categories. And you understand that distinction? Interpersonal, what you do with others, and intrapersonal, what you do inside your own skin. These are all the different levels you need to look at where you might want to make improvements and adjustments. Does this make sense to you, Charlene? Make sense to you guys? Yeah. So when you come home for a Sarge and you review, these are the various different things you can look. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, so let's start, since we're going to do some sequential stuff, let's start with openers. My theory is if you're really good with opening, if you're meeting, people usually come to me and they ask questions that are not the best questions. They say, how do you meet women on the tube? Or how do you meet women in the supermarket? Or how do you meet women on an airplane? Or they make it very geographical. But when you get really good with this stuff, you just find yourself meeting anywhere, everywhere you go. It's no longer about a geographical location, yeah? So basically, I like to think of my drawing is improving. That's a diamond. Okay? You can draw a diamond on your paper with 4 different positions. Each corner represents a position. Just draw it. Don't worry about Goran. This is only a model, but fundamentally, when you're going to do walk-ups, when you're going to meet women, there are 4 different approach attitudes, approach vibes, approach angles that you can use. And a good approach will either involve 2 of them simultaneously or one fractionating right after the other. So over here I have put-ons. Put-ons are anything that's a joke, that's obviously not meant to be taken seriously, or you're taking the piss out of the person, or you're saying something that is sort of like, it's putting her on. Do you know what having someone on means in Britain? Is that what you say? Oh, you like having us on? It's having someone on. Or it's saying something funny, put-ons. One of the things, I stopped doing it, but it was actually pretty effective. Let's say she had a really big bag, and I would say, wow, your bag is great. Sorry, my complimenter is on. Stuck. It gets a big laugh. Fuck y'all. That's an example of a put-on, right? Or another put-on I often use. I was at the Roosevelt Hotel, and they were having a Playmate convention. And I'm walking in the lobby, and I've never seen so many plastic surgery examples in like 9 square feet. These women walk down, and they got like collagen lip, and they walk like right in the middle of me. Suddenly I'm in a swarm of them. I look around and I say, I picked the wrong hotel to be gay. And they all laughed and they said, oh my God, that gives you a hug. You're coming with us. And they're dragging me along, and I'm talking about men. I'm saying, so aren't men dicks out here? And they all start going, and a few of them say, who says we're into men? And they're like, it was a really interesting thing. They were so stupid though. And like, I'm thinking, nah, I would rather go talk to the wall than talk to these people. But that's a good one. That's a good opener, is to say, I picked the wrong X to be gay. X would be wherever you are. So if like you're in the supermarket and this beautiful girl walks by you, you say, I picked the wrong aisle to be gay. Get it? That's a put on. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It opens the door with some laughter. Another put on is the fake stutter, to say, that bag is enormous. And you say, sorry, my complimenter is on stuck. Trust me, it always gets a laugh. You have to be able to deliver it right. So that's an example of a put on. What would be another put on? I've told you some. Well, be acting flamingly gay, which I don't do anymore. I used to. Yeah, the woman walks into the coffee bean. She's got pink eyeliner, pink lipstick, pink cheek blush. Strike that. She's wearing purple. Purple eyeliner, purple lipstick, purple blush. She had purple gym outfit, purple bag, purple nails. I forgot to mention that. She had purple streaks in her hair, too. And I said, excuse me, yes, the spirits are telling me, yes, you like the color purple. That was meant to be a put on, but she said, wow, you're good. She was dumb as a rock. Okay? Example of a put on.
So I know what your boyfriend looks like.
Oh, I haven't used that in a long time. I say to her, or to say, excuse me, miss, I know this is going to sound a little strange, but I know what your perfect lover looks like. She's going to go, what do you mean? I said, well, I see his face in the mirror every morning when I shave. Boom. Okay? I'm forgetting some. I've done a couple others that were really, really ripper funny in my career. There's context-specific put-ons. You like that, do you?
Yeah, it's fucking deadly.
Fucking deadly? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Back in April, I went to this to see this roly-poly, light in the loafers, flamingly gay spiritual reader. His name was Hans King. He had a crowd of women in that room, like 98 women, and the only two guys were me and my nephew. I said, hey, Gid, there's going to be plenty of punani here. Let's go cruise for chicks. He went, okay, uncle. So this guy is a complete retard. Well, he was. He was talking about how, did you know the universe wants you to find that perfect girl or guy? All you have to do is find someone who sees you exactly as you are without any wanting to change you and loves you just the way you are. I looked at Gideon and said, why didn't I think of that? Wow, it's really simple. It was ridiculous. But anyway, he kept talking about the spirits will give you lucky numbers, how you could tune into the spirits to get lotto numbers, right? They call it lotto here? And so at the break, I saw this hot-looking woman at the literature table. So I said to my nephew, watch this. And I walk up to her, and I have my cell phone in my hand. I say, excuse me, miss, but I know the spirits have been talking to me. Since the spirits are showing me a 10-digit number that is the absolute key to your happiness. I opened up my cell phone. It had the number of the phone on it right there. Now, she said, I'm here with my girlfriend. I said, like I said, the spirits. But that was very context specific, right? You couldn't use that somewhere else, could you? But maybe you're in the betting shop, right? You have, what is it, Ladbrokes? I don't know if you'd want to date a woman who frequents the betting shop, but you get my idea. You get the idea? Here's another put-on I love to do. Now I'm waking up. I'm remembering my own put-ons. In America, they have a store called Staples. It's office supplies. Do you have that? What do you have here? Staples. Go to your local Staples, find the prettiest girl there who's a customer, and walk up. I swear I've done this, and it works. Walk up and say, excuse me, but where do you keep the laser printer cartridges? And they always say, I don't work here. And you say, yeah, I know, but the people who work here are butt ugly, and you're really cute. Also works in the supermarket. Walk up to the pretty girl. Walk up to the pretty girl. Excuse me, but where do you keep the mango spicy jelly? You guys have some kind of jelly. I was at the open air market in Hammersmith, and it's jelly with pepper in it. What's the word? Chili jelly? What do you call it? No, it's like jelly with hot sauce in it. It's not chutney, but anyway. So walk up to the girl in the supermarket and say, excuse me, but where do you keep the lamb shanks? And they'll always say, well, I don't work here. And you go, yeah, I know, but the people who work here are dwarf butt ugly or whatever, and you're really cute. Get it? My name is. I like doing put-ons because they first of all, look up here. The thing about put-ons is they're screening. If a woman doesn't laugh at my jokes, I'm probably not going to get me, so I'm going to leave. You're screening to see if the person's playful, right? And it takes away the attention of meeting someone. When you start out with explosive laughter, it sort of like drops the natural tension between people. And they're fun to do, and put-ons challenge me to think on my feet. My best put-ons were not calculated. I didn't go out with them in my mind. I would come up with them on the spot. Yes, James, lesbian banger.
One of the ones I did once was in last January. Was in a club where, and this girl was sitting by the bar, and there was guys that come up to her every 2-3 minutes, and she was getting really pissed off with it. And there was this one guy who was hanging around, and I could tell she was like really pissed off with him. Went and said, "You two make such a cute couple." And she said, "Oh, he's been pestering me all night." And I said, "Yeah, I just have to give him a chance before I came along. My name's James."
Oh, I like that. I like that. Here's another one. If you see a woman, I've done this. If you see a woman who's blowing guys off left and right, walk up to her and say, you know, I'm wondering what it is you're doing to keep the guys away, because it's not working with me. Or if you see since you guys like to talk about sets, if you see a set and there's no guys around, and walk up and say, I'm wondering what you're doing to keep the guys away, because it's not working on me. Put-ons. So the key thing about a put-on is it's fun. It's obviously not done with any kind of malice to it. It's funny. It gets a laugh. From there, then, you're going to introduce yourself. So you do the put-on. Usually what happens is when I do a put-on, once the woman laughs, look up here. I'll say something like this. Once she laughs, I'll say, I'm glad you laughed because I noticed you here and I wanted to meet the person wrapped inside all the pretty. My name is. So that's my standard follow-up for a put-on. I'll say, I'm glad you laughed because I noticed you here and I wanted to meet the person wrapped in all the pretty. Hold on. Or I'll just say, I noticed you here and I wanted to meet you. The wrapped in the pretty is a clever way of implying. Now notice, it's not a direct compliment. We're going to get to indirect compliments in a moment. It's an implied compliment. I didn't say directly, I think you're very pretty. I said I wanted to meet the person wrapped in the pretty, which is not directly saying I think she's pretty. If you really want to be a bastard, you could say, I'm glad you laughed because I wanted to meet the person wrapped in all the pretty, but she just walked out the door. We don't do that kind of stuff. That's negging. We don't neg. Yes.
That opener that you just had about what is it that you're using to keep the men away, because it's not working for me.
It's not working with me, yeah.
Right. She will laugh, and automatically that opens up a bubble that you're both in the same side.
Now you're really learning. Do you see how smart he is? I do one little change, and suddenly he goes from a confused spastic to a super genius. The God of Thunder.